always imagined my wedding would smell like gardenias and buttercream, not police uniforms and rain on hot brick. The courtyard behind the old pink church glowed with string lights, and the oak branches held the air in their hands the way Charleston oaks do, patient and heavy. The quartet was playing a song that had followed me through college and breakups, and finally to this aisle. I remember thinking, absurdly, that the cello sounded like forgiveness. Then my groom, Ethan, tipped his head back for a toast and never brought it forward again. It wasn't dramatic. No gasp, no flailing. His eyes flicked, his fingers loosened, and the crystal flute tilted, sending a thin comet of champagne to the bricks. There was a beat of silence, an intake so unified it felt choreographed, and then sound returned like thunder, the chair scraping, the quartet breaking, my name from a dozen mouths. The officiant stepped forward, the best man Cole shouted for an EpiPen, my mother's bracelet clinked against her clutch. Someone cried into a linen napkin as if it were a script. I had seen Ethan's body go still before, asleep after a red-eye, laughing so hard he folded in half. But not like this. Not a stillness that looked like someone had pressed pause on his life. I knelt on brick that bit into my knees and felt his pulse with fingers that didn't feel like mine. The bubbles in my glass kept quietly popping. The world smelt like sugar and panic. When the ambulance doors closed and the courtyard was a rumor of footsteps and questions, a uniformed officer asked me to hand over my champagne glass. I did, and watched it go into a plastic bag that crackled like a secret. Later, they told me Ethan was gone before the wheels left the church gate. They would not say why. Not yet. They did say a word I could not fit into the dress I had chosen: suspicious. It was supposed to be the day we became a family. Instead, it was the day I realized someone at my wedding wanted me a widow. My name is Maya Navarro, 30 years old, events manager at a boutique hotel on Bay Street that sells authentic low-country charm by the hour. I know how to hide stains with table runners and calm mothers with extra boutonniere pins. When I met Ethan at a vendor tasting where he was pitching his startup's app to improve seating charts, he wore a navy suit too warm for the weather and a grin too bright for the room. He sold software that promised to keep families from killing each other with escort cards. I told him that was impossible. He said I hadn't met his algorithm yet. He had a way of listening that made you remember things you didn't know you'd forgotten. He loved black coffee and old movies and my worst jokes. His father owned a small construction firm that built porches and rehung shutters on houses everyone took photos of. His mother ran the books from a kitchen desk. Ethan had one sister, Leela, who could turn a compliment into a blade and a blade into a compliment. Charleston made a certain kind of sense to us. History underfoot, stories in brick, the ocean close enough to change the air. We moved into a second-floor apartment above a consignment shop where the mannequins never faced the same direction twice. Our fights were small at first. Who left the AC on, who took out the trash. The big things felt agreed upon. No secrets, shared passwords, a wedding under the oaks in late spring when the air tastes like green apples. That winter, Ethan's company, Seatwise, started to wobble. A big client ghosted him, and an investor who'd promised a bridge round built a bridge to somewhere else. Ethan laughed it off. Every startup is 2 weeks from dying, he liked to say, as if proximity to the edge were a kind of a romance. Cole, his best man and co-founder, doubled down, sleeping at the office and eating vending machine dinners like penance. I brought coffee and watched them turn spreadsheets into hope. We kept the date. We booked a courtyard behind a little church the color of a blush, hired a quartet, asked my cousin to make the cake because her buttercream was the kind of miracle that made even the surliest uncle smile. Ethan wanted a small wedding. Leela wanted a big one. We compromised at elegant but intimate, which in Charleston means expensive. If money was a question, we answered it with optimism. Ethan took on a hush-hush consulting contract with a larger tech company in town, Light-Based Systems, to help them with an event product. NDA City, he warned, waggling his eyebrows, but nothing sketchy. He promised me, and I believed him, even when the hours stretched thin and he came home smelling like someone else's office. We had our cast of characters: my mother, who cried at commercials and weddings equally; my father, who pretended to be unimpressed and then ironed his shirt twice; my maid of honor, Jules, who had been my roommate when our apartment walls were thin and our lives were thinner; Ethan's parents, proud and tired; Leela, whose idea of a helpful critique was, "Your hair is almost right, try again." There was also Harper, the planner, I'd hired paradoxically because working my own wedding would be madness, and a photographer named Tia, who saw things in the corners of rooms other people missed. If this sounds like the start of a mystery, it didn't feel like one. It felt like a plan. The rehearsal dinner glowed, the toasts were tender. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "Tomorrow." And for once, tomorrow sounded like shelter instead of risk. On the morning of the wedding, the air had that after-storm clarity that makes colors louder. I lined up the escort cards alphabetically, even though Harper said her software would handle it. I checked my bouquet for bruised petals. When Gia adjusted my veil, she said, "You look like yourself," and I thought there was no better blessing. By twilight, the oak leaves were whispering, the candles were doing their soft dance, the champagne was sweating in silver buckets, and everything smelled like promise. I did not yet know what else it smelled like. Who pours danger into a flute and calls it celebration? The officiant had just made the joke about how we'd used Ethan's app for the seating chart, and how, should anything go wrong, tech support was standing at the altar. People laughed the way people do when they want to help a moment along. We were in the toasts, that delicate hour where love becomes a microphone. Cole told the story about how Ethan once drove 3 hours to return a ring someone left at a tasting, because he believed in happy endings, even for strangers. Leela made a speech that was technically sweet and somehow also about Leela. My mother quoted Pablo Neruda and then apologized to Neruda. Then Harper lifted the bottle like a priest lifting a chalice and topped off our flutes. I remember the way the bubbles looked like falling stars. Ethan raised his glass toward me, that half smile I knew, and said, "To the only algorithm I ever understood." It was corny. It was perfect. We touched rims. We sipped. His hand loosened. The rim slipped. The liquid traced a gold line to brick. "EpiPen!" Cole yelled. Pure reflex. Ethan had a mild nut allergy that hadn't flared in years but lived rent-free in Cole's head. My father was already calling 911. Harper went white and very calm in a way that made me trust her. Jules grabbed my shoulders so I wouldn't fall through myself. The quartet stopped mid-bow, the note hanging like a question. There is a kind of quiet hospitals know that courtyards learn in moments like this. The paramedics worked with practiced choreography. The lights painted the brick blue-white. The oak leaves whispered above a scene that had no right to be under a tree. Somewhere the cake waited, uncut. Somewhere the seating chart insisted on order. The last thing I saw before they closed the ambulance doors was my flute, still beaded with cold, sitting alone on the sweetheart table. Gia's camera clicked once, the reflex of an artist who records even the things she wishes she didn't have to. Why did my glass suddenly look like evidence? Detective Ruth Caldwell arrived with rain on her shoulders and eyes like a carpenter's level, steadiness checking for tilt. She spoke softly and then asked hard questions, which is the only order that works. "We're treating this as an unexplained medical event pending toxicology," she said. and as a matter of caution, as a potential criminal act. The word criminal pried something loose in me. I thought the vows had bolted down. They bagged my flute, they bagged Ethan's. They bagged the bottle Harper had poured from, its foil collar still neat. Caldwell asked for lists: caterers, bartenders, planners, anyone who touched glass or bottle. In events, the chain of custody of joy is long. I wrote names until my hand cramped. Harper, planner; Ben, bartender; Kelsey, assistant; Gia, photographer; Cole, best man; Lila, sister; my parents; Ethan's parents; Jules, the officiant; the quartet; the rental company; the florist. Caldwell nodded, as if expecting a cast this size. Did Ethan take any medications? No. Any enemies? I laughed, which was a sound I immediately hated. He made software for weddings. Everyone planning a wedding is temporarily an enemy, but no. Caldwell waited. Her silence made space for truth. I said, he had stress. Seat-wise was struggling. He took a consulting gig with light-based systems. All boring, all legal. I was saying it to convince myself. She asked to see the dressing room. The air in there still smelled like hairspray and gardenias. My EpiPen, habit, even though the allergy was his, was supposed to live in my clutch. My clutch was open on the vanity, lipstick like a small red bullet beside it, tissues like surrendered flags. The EpiPen slot was empty. I felt something cold run between my shoulder blades. I packed it this morning, I said. Caldwell nodded. Find it, she said, not unkindly. Harper perched on a stool outside like a bird that had forgotten how to fly. I'll comp everything, she kept saying, which made me want to scream. Jules put a blanket over my shoulders even though it was still 80s and humid. Cole stood at the far edge of the courtyard, phoned his ear, whispering in a voice that sounded like someone else's. Leela moved among guests gathering purses and cousins, murmuring with the efficiency of a queen. Gia had retreated into her camera, which is where photographers go when the world needs distance. Ben, the bartender, swore he had opened a fresh bottle for the toast. One Harper had handed him from a box with a silver sticker on it. Kelsey said she'd seen Harper mark one bottle VIP earlier, normal for couples who want nicer bubbles at the head table, but that the sticker color looked different later. Maybe the light, she said. Caldwell looked at the box. The silver sticker was gone. When I finally got home, rain started in earnest, loud on the windows. I was still in my dress. The zipper had welded itself to the day. I sat on the floor and oriented myself around ordinary things. The sound of the fridge, the clock tick, the smell of my own soap on my wrist. Ethan's suit jacket lay over a chair, one of his cufflinks still in. I checked his pockets for a note I knew wouldn't be there, and found a black phone I didn't recognize. No case, no wallpaper. It was the kind of phone you buy when you don't want to be found by a filter. It asked for a 6-digit code. I tried his birthday, my birthday, our address. No luck. I held it like a small animal that might bite. The screen reflected my face and a stranger's eyes. Who brings a secret phone to his wedding? And why? 2 days later, Caldwell called. Her voice was gentle in a way that warned me. Preliminary talks came back, she said. There are trace amounts of a cardiac glycoside, something you'd find in certain plants or medications, at levels inconsistent with prescribed use. She paused to let the world tilt. This isn't a diagnosis. It's a flag. We're moving forward under the assumption your husband's death was not natural. I stood at the kitchen sink, the Charleston light too bright for the word she hadn't said, but was building toward poisoning. My mind did what minds do. It ran through lists. Who poured the toast? Harper. Who handed the glasses? Ben and Kelsey. Who touched our table? Cole, Lila, the officiant, my mother when she adjusted the napkins because she can't help herself. Caldwell asked permission to image Ethan's devices. I told her about the black phone. She went quiet for a second. That said a lot. We'll pick it up, she said. Do not try to unlock it. I agreed and put it in a drawer where I imagined FBI agents put things, on top of warranties and near expired coupons. At the funeral, the church smelled like wax and lilies and the ocean trying to be polite. People told me stories as if they were depositing coins into a jar labeled Ethan. Cole spoke like a man on a dock watching his boat drift away. Lila looked like a painting of sorrow and passed me a note afterward that said, "We will find who did this." It was both comfort and threat. After the reception that wasn't, Harper asked to meet.
We sat at a coffee shop that had the audacity to be cheerful. She looked like she hadn't slept since the night. "I didn't touch your glass," she said before hello. "I did pour the head table bottle, yes, but I set it on a tray with the others. Ben did the rest." Her hands shook when she reached for her cup. "I marked a bottle VIP because couples like nice things at the sweetheart table. I swear to you, I didn't—" She stopped because the sentence had nowhere safe to go. "Why was the sticker different?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "Kelsey thought the sticker color looked different later," I said. Harper frowned, thinking. "I put a silver star on the bottle in the office. The one at the table had a gold dot." She closed her eyes. "I thought I'd misremembered. I didn't want to make trouble." Trouble had already found us a seat. Who changed the bottle and when?
Caldwell's team pulled security footage from the courtyard, lights flickering, servers moving like chess pieces, Ben polishing glasses with a towel that left no lint, Harper's clipboard orbiting tables like a small moon. They watched the moment the bottle changed hands. They watched Cole clink his glass against Ethan's and then mine. They watched Leela lean in to straighten my veil, her ring catching the light, and touch the edge of the sweetheart table as if steadying herself. They watched the photographer, Gia, set down her camera to help the quartet find a new place for a stand light, and they watched a woman I didn't recognize, in a green dress with cap sleeves, blonde hair pinned tight, hover at the far edge of the head table while everyone's attention swung toward the band. Her hand moved toward the flutes. She paused, then glided away like a thought. "Guest list?" Caldwell asked. I scanned names. No green dress. "Open bar attracts walk-ins," I said, trying to joke and failing. Caldwell didn't smile. "We'll find her." Seatwise's office, where Cole slept through the worst month, looked like a whiteboard exploded. He had the hollowed-out look of someone who was eating grief and caffeine in equal measure. "Ethan kept things from me at the end," he said, jaw tight. "He was meeting with Light Bay without me, said it was clean. It wasn't. He showed me emails, a pilot integration, a licensing conversation, and then a terse note from Light Bay's lawyer. 'We are terminating the discussion. Do not use or disclose any of our materials.' The date was a week before the wedding." "Were you angry?" I asked. Cole rubbed his eyes. "Angry at the universe? Yes. At Ethan? Sometimes, sure. Enough to—" He stopped and looked at me like he couldn't believe I'd asked him. I couldn't either, but grief is a scavenger. It will eat any thought it can find. Leela, for her part, curated grief like a gallery opening. She organized the meal train, the memorial slideshow, the hashtag. "We need to control the narrative," she told me, which made me want to throw my phone into the harbor. "The narrative is that my husband died," I said. She softened, briefly, like a cloud uncurling. "I know," she said. "We'll make them care." At night, I replayed the moment. The rim of crystal, the tilt, the comet of champagne. The sound of my name said by 100 mouths. The weight of a black phone in a drawer. The empty EpiPen slot in my clutch. The gold dot sticker. The woman in green. The way Harper's hands had started trembling only after the police left. The call came at 2 a.m. because bad news keeps bad hours. "We found your EpiPen," Sure Caldwell said, "in a trash bin behind the venue." My heart beat like it was trying to break the lease on my ribcage. "Empty?" I asked. "No, unopened," she said. "Which means the one missing from your clutch wasn't yours." She let that sink in. "And we matched partial prints on the bottle to 2 people. Ben, which we expect, and Gia, your photographer." I pictured Gia's hands steady on a lens, smudged with sugar dust from cake tastings, quick with a hairpin. "She said she moved a glass for a shot," Caldwell said. Maybe she did, but she also took a photo 3 minutes before the toast that we'd like to see. She's been, reluctant. I knew why. Sometimes the worst thing you can do to a photographer is make them show you the truth they caught without meaning to. What did Gia's camera see that our eyes missed? Gia agreed to meet me at her studio, a narrow space that smelled like coffee and fixer. She looked smaller without her camera, as if the lens had been a part of her spine. "I don't want to get anyone in trouble," she said. Trouble is already here, I said. I just need to know if it has a face. She scrolled through images, Harper placing the bottle, Ben lining up flutes on a tray like little soldiers, Kelsey laughing at something the violinist said, Cole checking the time, Lila checking herself in a window, me touching Ethan's sleeve, Ethan touching my cheek. Then a frame I didn't recognize, a close shot of 2 flutes at the sweetheart table, one with the faint smear of lipstick, the other pristine. In the reflection in the glass, tiny and warped, was a woman's face turned sideways, the blonde from the footage, green dress shimmering even in a reflection the size of a thumbnail. Who is she? I breathed. Gia zoomed in until the pixels gave up. I thought she was with his side, she said. She moved like she belonged. Then Gia swallowed. There's one more. She pulled up a frame of the same flutes a minute later. The lipstick smear had migrated to the other glass. I stared. My skin prickled as if the room temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Someone swished our glasses, I said. Gia nodded, tears standing but not falling. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know what I was seeing until after. Caldwell, when I told her, went very still. If the intent glass was yours, she said, and Ethan drank from it instead, the sentence didn't finish because it didn't have to. I had a choice. Let Caldwell fold this into procedure and wait for a system that was methodical and slow, or step into the story and risk doing something stupid and necessary. I thought of Ethan's joke about tech support standing at the altar and how I had laughed, and then he had died. I want to help, I said. Not as a vigilante, Caldwell warned, as a witness with a good memory. I promised I would be the latter. I did not promise my heart would listen. If the glass was meant for me, who wanted me gone, and why did Ethan take my place? The woman in green had a name, Sloane Ryder. Caldwell found her through a florist's tag on Instagram. Sloane had been in the courtyard earlier taking photos of an arrangement she just had to share, even though it wasn't her work. People who need to be seen always find a camera. Sloane had dated Ethan 5 years ago, back when he measured time in shift drinks and apps that never launched. It had ended messy and quick, like a summer storm. They hadn't spoken since, if you asked Ethan. If you asked Sloane, the story had different chapters. Caldwell pulled messages from the black phone. Sloane's name wasn't in them, but Jules was. My maid of honor, my person who had slept on my floor when my first apartment leaked, my person who had memorized my coffee order and my omission of certain truths. There were messages from a number saved as J to Ethan the week before the wedding. We need to talk before you do this. She doesn't know. If you won't tell her, I will. Ethan's replies were a mix of please and after and don't do this to her. My mouth went dry as dust. Affair? Caldwell asked. Not unkindly, because years make detectives pragmatic about the soft parts of people. I shook my head so hard my veil would have fallen off if I'd been wearing one. No, I said softer. I don't know. Memory made a slideshow. Jules going quiet when Ethan entered a room. The way she'd said future lately as if it were a bad taste. The blanket around my shoulders the night of the courtyard, tucked with a neatness that felt like penance. When Caldwell and I confronted her, Jules cried in the way people do when the truth is finally relieved to be told. I wasn't sleeping with him, she said. I swear. 5 years ago, before you, Sloane was. She started showing up again after the engagement, DMing, hinting he promised her things. I told him to handle it. He didn't. Then he told me something else and made me swear to wait until after the honeymoon so you wouldn't walk away. What something else? I asked. My voice sounded like a hallway, long, echoing, empty at the end. Jules looked at the floor. Light Bay wasn't just piloting seat-wise. They were in talks to acquire it and keep Ethan on. If the deal closed after the wedding, your joint accounts and community property would make certain payouts shared. If it closed before, his investor, who is also his father's lender, had a clause that clawed it back.
Ethan moved the date to protect his parents. He didn't tell you because he thought you'd insist he do it the fair way. He said you were always fair. My chest ached the way it does before a sob. And Sloane? I asked. Jules wiped her face with a sleeve. Sloane hates neat endings. She found out about the deal and told Ethan he'd tell you he was selling before he told you. He tried to keep it quiet for a week. He thought if he could make everyone safe, the truth would land better. It made a kind of sense that hurt. Caldwell's eyes sharpened. So who wanted Maya gone, she asked. Jules's gaze was a lighthouse sweeping past me to the rocks. Someone who needed the deal to go through without a spouse in the picture. Or someone who wanted to hurt Ethan for choosing a neat ending that didn't include them. She took a breath. Sloane works events. She could blend in, but she doesn't know poison from perfume. Leela does. The room tilted. Leela? I managed. Jules nodded, miserable. Ethan told me his parents insisted on a prenup. You signed it because you loved him and didn't want money to be the story. True. But 3 weeks before the wedding, Ethan told Leela he was amending his will to leave you certain personal assets, including shares in his father's company, because you saved their books with a vendor deal last year. Leela said you were temporary. She said blood should stay with blood. I thought of Leela's note, "We will find who did this," and how, in the right light, we can look like a weapon. Caldwell stood. She was going to talk to Leela. Maya, stay home. I nodded, then didn't. If the glass was meant for me, was the hand that moved it wearing my new family's ring?
Charleston storms gather like gossip, slowly, then all at once. The sky was the color of bruised peaches when I parked outside Ethan's parents' house. I told myself I was dropping food. I told myself I could wait in the car. I told myself lies so practiced they felt like prayer. Lila opened the door as if she'd been standing behind it. The foyer smelled like lemon oil and a life lived with coasters. She looked tired and polished and dangerous. "You shouldn't be here," she said, which was the first true thing between us. Behind her, Ethan's mother called my name in a voice that sank me. We sat in the formal living room where no one ever sat. Lila poured tea with hands that did not shake. "Detective Caldwell is on her way," I said, because it felt like a life raft. Lila's mouth curved. "Of course she is." I placed a photo on the table, Gia's frame with the mirrored face. Lila studied it as if it might ask her a question on a test. "Pretty dress," she said, which answered something else. "Why did you move the glasses, Lila?" I asked. She looked up, eyebrows lifting in an elegant expression of injury. "I didn't," she said. The room ticked. The rain decided to begin. "Sloane did," I said, "but only after someone put something into one of them." I leaned forward. "You touched the table. Gia's camera caught your ring." I paused. "You changed the sticker, too." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You think I killed my brother at his wedding?" she said, tasting each word like a wine she might send back. "I think someone wanted me gone," I said, voice small, and Ethan took my glass. Thunder rolled like furniture being moved upstairs. Lila's face stiffened around a thought. "She always did that," she said, like a complaint. Stepped in, fixed, chose for people. She set her cup down with a click. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The hallway filled with the soft authority of Caldwell's voice. 2 uniformed officers stood behind her like commas. Lila's mother appeared in the doorway, tears already on her cheeks, grief making a shape of her. "Lila," she whispered, and in that syllable was a library. Caldwell sat, not asking permission. She said, "We have a warrant for your devices and a few questions. It will go better if you answer them here." Lila smoothed her skirt, buying time like fabric. "We were protecting our family," she said. "Ethan was about to give away parts of it to a woman he'd known 2 years. Her gaze flicked to me, a blade and then a mirror. "He asked me to trust you. He never asked me to trust anyone."
Caldwell waited. Lila's words hurried to fill the space. I didn't poison anyone, she said. I did move a sticker. I wanted the nicer bottle at your table. I thought... She stopped, knowing how it sounded. And I touched the flutes to straighten them. Sloane, the woman in green, moved them after me. I thought she was staff. The truth in that last sentence rang, small and thin. Where did you get the glycoside? Caldwell asked softly. Lila closed her eyes. I didn't, I swear. I have a digitalis prescription from my grandmother. She lives with us sometimes. But I didn't... She pressed her lips together until color fled them. I only wanted you late, she said to me, quietly. I asked Harper to delay the ceremony with a seating issue so Ethan and I could talk about the shares. She said no. A beat. I may have told her I'd ruin her reviews if she didn't cooperate. There it was, the cruelty I'd felt in her kindness, blooming. Caldwell's phone buzzed. She read and then looked at Lila. We found Sloane, and we found messages between her and Ben, the bartender. He owed her money. She promised him a cut from a story she was selling if he let her handle the head table bottle. He says he didn't know what she planned. He thought she wanted a photo op. Caldwell stood. We also found a search on Sloane's laptop. How much digitalis is lethal? I felt the room tilt back toward the world. So Sloane, I said. Caldwell nodded once. We're bringing her in now. She turned to Lila. You are not under arrest, but I recommend you stop trying to orchestrate anything. The internet is not your friend. Lila looked at me like she wanted to burn my face into her memory with a glare. He chose you, she said, softly, resentment braided with something bordering on admiration. He chose you even in the last second. She swallowed. He always did. What do you do with a love that threw itself in front of you?
Sloane confessed the way people do when a story has been waiting to be told, in spurts, then in floods. She had wanted to ruin my wedding, not end a life. She had flirted with Ben to get near the bottle. She had read an article and thought she understood plants and dosages and consequences. She had poured hatred into a flute and then switched our glasses when she realized the lipstick would give her away. She wanted me humiliated, not dead. She wanted a story. She got one. The DA charged her with manslaughter and a constellation of lesser stars, tampering, fraud, assault. Ben pled to something smaller and cried on a local news clip that made everyone I knew text me at once. Harper posted a carefully worded apology that made other planners in town roll their eyes. Cole shut Seatwise down with a goodbye note that used the word family in a way that made me both angry and proud. Lightbay sent flowers and a card that said nothing because corporations can't say anything that matters. We buried Ethan on a bright day because Charleston refuses to match sky to mood. The reception that wasn't became a memorial that was. People told me stories I think they needed to hear themselves say. Leela and I shared a silence that will take years to translate. Ethan's parents hugged me like someone had taken the middle section out of their ladder, and I was the rung they still had. I moved back into work because work is a place where problems have timelines and linens have sizes. I became the manager who triple-checked the head table and guarded the champagne like a dragon. Grief didn't leave. It learned my schedule. Some mornings it sat in the passenger seat. Some nights it rattled the blinds. But sometimes it stepped into the next room long enough for me to hear something else. The cello line from the song we didn't get to finish. The way Ethan said my name when he was smiling. The sound of my own breath becoming steady. If survival is an RSVP, I clicked accept, even if I didn't know what I was attending. I think about the glasses more than I think about the vows. Maybe because vows are a promise and glasses are a choice, and we think we're good at one and bad at the other, but it's usually the reverse. I think about how easily joy and danger can be mistaken for each other when poured into crystal and held up to the light. I think about how Ethan's hand always moved toward mine reflexively, like the second half of a word, and how even in the last second, some part of him leaned into my life. I have learned to ask the question I avoided on my happiest days: who benefits from silence? I have learned to trust my eyes and my camera and my friends and the detective who spoke softly and carried facts. I have learned that being chosen is not the same as being saved, and that sometimes they happen at once and leave you with a strange kind of mercy. Mostly, I have learned that love, like glass, is both fragile and strong, and that what breaks you can be what lets the light in. When I raise a glass now, I look at the reflection first and then at the person beside me. I drink to the ones we lost, to the ones who stayed, and to the choice to keep standing in the light.